Hi everyone. Wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about some of the pitfalls to avoid when doing your central line dressing change. So what I'll tell you is that these are the things that we've seen as being issues at times. So you'll get your full demo in class about the skill, but these are some things to help remind you to avoid, so that way then, or to prevent issues for you in your checkoffs. So, first couple things is when you're getting ready to do your checkoff, get your trash can. And you want to put it here. And this will become more evident in a minute about why this is an issue. So, as you're doing your skill, of course you're going to identify your patient, you're going to assess them. We want to assess their lungs because someone with a central line, there could have been a nick in the lung that maybe their pneumothorax is not going to develop right away. So make sure we want to assess lungs, we want to assess the heart to make sure that their heart sounds are good, because if there is some migration, it could be touching part of a heart valve or into the heart itself, and so we'd want to listen for any abnormal heart sounds. We'd also want to be checking their arms and looking for any edema with a PICC line or a central line. Because if a blood clot is forming on our tube within our patient, it could limit the blood flow. So we would want to check for symmetry on both sides. Is there edema on both sides? If it's only on the side that has the central line, that's a problem. So make sure you're thinking about things like that when you're doing your assessment. How's their capillary refill? Is there any issues? If you're worried about edema, the way we would check that is we would measure around one side, measure around the other, and see if they match. Also ask your patient, is this kind of how your arms would look on a regular basis? So, are their fingers more puffy than they would normally be? Is there any issues that they're seeing? Because they know what their baseline is better than we do, so utilize them as a resource. So, as we're working with our patient, and we're getting ready, I'm going to do my first assessment of the site as I'm assessing my patient. I'm just going to take a look at it. Does it look red? Does it look inflamed? Does it have any issues? Do I see any oozing? And that's the first assessment of the site. In your checkoff, you notice that there's two assessments of the site. One before we do anything to it, and one after we have the dressing off. So make sure you look at it, because that tells you, do I need to get my swab to do a culture of that site? Because you may look at it and be like, ooh, that's bad. So then we know we need to do our culture. So then, as I wash my hands and I'm getting ready to actually start the skill itself, the first thing I do is get rid of the dressing. So when we're getting rid of the dressing, and I'm just going to grab a pair of gloves here, because I want you to see it kind of with the gloves on, because that's what you're going to be doing yourself. I'm going to put on my gloves. And doing it backwards there, excellent. See, we all struggle with gloves. So, as I'm going to take off my dressing, and I'm going to turn our friend Chester here a little bit, I'm going to keep my thumb on my hub while the dressing is on. When the dressing is off, you can't touch any space of where that dressing is. So make sure that when you're doing this, and you always want to work towards the center of your hub here, you don't want to be going all the way across. You want to pull everything towards the center piece. Notice I have not opened my kit yet. The longer it is open, the less likely it is to be sterile. So I want to keep this closed until I'm ready to open it and start working with it. So I'm taking off my dressing. I'm just going to work my way around, and I'm going to keep pulling on my edges and keep working it. It's kind of like a command hook that if you pull against it, it'll help break the adhesive. So you don't have to like rip this way, just pull the opposite direction against it, and it will help it release for you. So as I'm going around, I'm just making sure that I'm not touching, again, the space where the dressing was, because that's an area that we want it to be as sterile as possible. So I'm just going to go through now, work on this side, using my finger here to stabilize, and I'm just gonna keep working on pulling this off. There's a label on this, so I can't get it off the way I normally would. So then once I have that done, I'm gonna keep my finger on the dressing as I peel it away, and in real life, it would be secured down. So I wouldn't have the issue. So as long as you state, this would be secured, so I would not have to put my finger here, but you need to state that, because otherwise I don't know that you're thinking about that. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to take off my piece of tape. You can take off the tape before you remove the big dressing if you want. My preference is I like to wait just because I feel like it gives me some extra security. And remember, this tape that area is below our sterile space, so I don't have to worry about that. So moving the garbage, because then I can just drop things, because you can't turn your back on this side. If you leave your garbage across the room in your checkoff room, the moment you do this, that space is no longer sterile or where we need it to be. So we are going to always keep our face towards our site. This is why moving your trash can is important. Now let's say you forgot to move your trash can because you're doing a checkoff and you're stressed and you're worried and your mind's running a million things. Just drop it on the floor then. Just like with my trash can here, if I were to happen to drop it and it didn't land in the trash can, that's okay. Pick it up later. It's not gonna end the world if there is a piece of tape sitting on the ground. So now at this point, I'm ready to get into my kit. So now I'm going to take off my gloves and I'm gonna open up my kit. So as I open my kit, and I open it, remember I'm not reaching across it as I open it. And of course we would have done our mask and all that other stuff before, so like this I wouldn't need. And then I'm gonna take out my gloves. And notice how it keeps kind of folding, like just give it a second, pull on it some more. I know that Katie does a really, like she has people go around and open it and take the lid completely off, which is fine too. So it doesn't matter how you open it as long as you're not breaking the rules of sterility. So when it's time to get your gloves, and you take them out, and you set them down. So another pitfall that people usually come on is that when they're opening their gloves, they tend to want to, it's like you've got your feet planted here and you're afraid to move. Don't be afraid to move. It's okay. So instead of opening your glove like this and then trying to, because this is where people try to end up almost contaminating their site or their kit because they're trying to open and there's that flap, or then they're trying to move and then if you move down here and you're trying to put on your gloves, you're no longer seeing your site. So the way to avoid that is when you take out your gloves, so I'm just gonna fold them back up here, and you're taking them out of your kit, I want you to move your feet. So step down to here at the end of the table. I'm just gonna move up here to make sure you can see what I'm doing. So when I'm doing this, I can see my kit so it stays sterile, and I can see my site. So I know that everything is where it needs to be and sterile and clean. So then as I'm opening my gloves, I'm not turning my back. And then when I get to the edge of the table here, I can actually kind of give this a little bit of a pull down, and that prevents the floppage of the paper here coming back up on you. So these are medium gloves, so they're not gonna fit me well. So I'm not gonna tell you a lot about with putting your sterile gloves on, but I gotta kind of open them here. So when you go to do your gloves, remember, your skin can touch the inside of the glove, but you cannot touch the outside of the glove. So I'm going to pick up my glove and I'm going to start working my hand in. And again, these are about 2 sizes too small for me, so I may have some struggles, and we'll talk about that. As I'm putting on the glove, I can move around and pull down touching the inside of the glove because there's that cuff area. And that's okay. You can work yourself around. What you don't want to have happen is exactly what I have happened right here, and I'm just going to kind of move up. the outside of my glove has rolled over and is now touching my skin. That is a break-in sterile. So as you're putting on your gloves and you get them on, you can't like go under because now you're touching more of the outside of the glove. And again, because these are small for me, they're gonna roll automatically. So once you put on your gloves, and this is where I suggest take off any rings, take off any watches, and see, now I just broke sterile again. See, even we can make a mistake. Because I have to scoop under, and I say hitchhike the thumb. So when you're hitchhiking the thumb, it means just keep it out there. Don't do this because your sterile glove cannot touch the inside of that. So then as you're putting on your second glove, you can keep that cuff up and use it to help you work your way around. And because I'm trying to squeeze into a too small of a glove here, it's not working well. But again, if you look, this has rolled, and because my watch was in the way, it made the roll happen here, which is not sterile. So let's just say though that I think I have them on appropriately. Before I continue, I'm going to stop and I'm going to do this. And I'm going to look at my gloves, because half the time we put them on and then people just, okay, I'm ready to go. But you don't want to do that. You want to stop and take that second and say, oh, my glove is not sterile. I would change them out. And because that's okay. I would rather you, and all of us would rather you notice when you're not sterile than to think you are when you're not. So once I get my gloves on, and Lord have mercy, these do not fit well. Let's see if I can stretch that a little bit. If your facility requires using this, that's fine. Some facilities now are requiring that you take this and use it as a drape for the patient for your purposes today, so that way you can see. I'm not going to put it in the way. I'm then going to go and I'm going to find my forceps and my cleaning product. So, do you need to use these right now? No. I use them now because if I am grabbing stuff, I'm breaking sterile of this hand. And I really want both hands sterile for when I apply the dressing. So I use the forceps as a way to handle my lumens. So I take them and I put it on, and I'm gonna crack my cleaning thing, give it the shake to make it come off. And then when we clean, we need to clean for at least 30 seconds. This doesn't mean that you're gonna verbalize you would clean for 30 seconds. You need to clean for 30 seconds. The proper way to clean this is you're going to start on one corner and you're gonna work your way across for 10 seconds. So we're gonna scrub and work our way, and this is where I use the forceps to lift up so I can clean that skin underneath as well. So I'm gonna do my 10 seconds across, and then I'm gonna take, and I'm gonna go the other direction, and I'm gonna do 10 seconds across this way. And you're saying, hey, wait a minute there, buddy, because we're not supposed to clean across the same site. That is true in certain cases, but studies have found that doing the friction is more important, and we're gonna get to the cleaning from the site out in a second. So 10 seconds, I'm gonna go across, again, working my way, using my forceps, keeping this hand sterile, so that way then as I scrub across, and then we're gonna work our way out for 10 seconds. So I'm gonna start at my site, and I'm gonna kind of just half circle it around and around, working my way out, and again, forceps can help me lift to clean my area. Whatever the size of the dressing you have is about the size of the space you need to clean. So that 10 seconds across needs to be a pretty decent size. 10 seconds across, and again, same size, and then work our way out, same size. So once I've done all this scrubbing, I'm now gonna take these. I'm gonna hang on to these for a minute, and I'll show you why in a moment. So I'm gonna drop them into my trash. So then I'm gonna take my dressing, and this is why having both hands sterile is a benefit. Because if this hand isn't sterile, I don't need to be touching where I'm gonna be opening this, because think sterile is contaminated within 1 inch. So if this hand wasn't sterile, I can't touch within 1 inch of this edge where my site's gonna be. So what I say is keep this hand sterile. That way then as you take your dressing off, you're not worried about contamination. Again, trash can right here, and luckily it made it in the trash can. If it didn't, let it go. If I could afford the copyright for this song, I would put it in there, but I can't. So I'm gonna take my dressing now, and I'm going to try to get the center of my dressing at my insertion site. So as I'm lining up here, I'm just gonna kind of keep an eye, and I was trying to angle mine this way because I don't want the dressing on their neck, because the neck, as it moves, it's gonna create folds and it can make your dressing become contaminated easier. So what I would be doing is I wanna have my dressing kind of at a bit of an angle here. And in most cases, your central line is gonna be facing more kind of this way anyway. But because plastic, we can't put sutures in and keep it there. So we wanna kind of follow the curve of the patient, and I'm gonna put my dressing on. And if it's not perfectly centered, that's okay. Don't be peeling it off trying to redo. As long as you're close in the general vicinity, you're fine. So, like don't be, because the moment you start trying to peel this back off and stuff, it's just gonna get messy and make a problem. If it was really off and you needed to, you would just get another dressing. So then I'm gonna peel off my round edge here. And then once this is off, I would take my label and I would stick it onto my dressing. And at this point, we are no longer sterile. So I don't have to worry about dropping my hands or anything like that. I'm fine. So then I'm going to take and get this, and I'm going to do my scrubbing. So you can use this to help hold it, but again, we're not sterile at this point. It's not, I mean, is it good practice? Yeah, but it's not sterile. We don't have to worry about, because these weren't sterile beforehand. So I'm gonna scrub my one, throw away, get a new one, scrub the second one, throw it away, get my third one, and scrub. We're saving your tuition by only giving you one, so just tell us what you're doing there. And then I gotta put my tape on. So one of the things that I like to do with this is take my gloves off, because it's really hard working with tape with gloves on. So when I take my piece of tape here, because if you notice, this dressing is pretty big and it doesn't leave me a lot of room on my lumens. So one thing you can do to make that a better and easier process is get rid of your little starter tab. And then I'm gonna take off my piece of tape here, and I'm gonna do probably about 3 or 4 inches. We're not gonna measure it. Now, as long as you don't try to like go across their chest, it's fine. And then I like to rip it down in half to a smaller piece of tape, because then when I put this across here, it gives me more room for my lumens to be usable. The moment that you make it that extra inch, and notice I didn't get on my dressing, I'm right beneath it, like my dressing line is right there. So it gives me a little more room to play with my lumens, so if I'm giving meds or drawing blood. So the other thing that I kind of want to show you about with this guy, and the reason why I say hang on to it, is because part of your checkoff is that you have to change a cap. So when you go to change a cap, of course, we're going to clamp it off so we don't get an air embolism. And sometimes people get a little overzealous because they're nervous, and they end up putting these caps on so tight that they can't be gotten off very easily. So what I do is I take my little forceps here, and I use this piece that's right there, and there's those 2 little knobs that kind of help hold things, is I put that around the plastic piece here, and I use that kind of like I would use a wrench, and I use that to help me with getting this off. And of course I'm having issues with it because I'm trying to film this for you guys, so the struggle is real, I get it. Wow, okay. In this case, I would go get some forceps, or some hemostats, because this is not working even with my plastic. Holy goodness. So, moral of the story, these would be loosened up at some point, hopefully, and I will make sure and loosen them up for checkoffs next semester. but as you're working with this, you can use it for that. You don't have to, it's up to you. So those are some kind of the things just to kind of give you some pointers and tips and tricks to think about as you're doing your checkoff. So big things, get your trash can in place. So that way you can just drop stuff right away and you're not turning your back. Move your feet when you're doing your gloves, and then give your gloves that extra check. And hopefully that helps. If you have questions, please talk to your instructor, and we will do our best to help you out so that way you don't have to be as nervous about sterile dressing change. Have a great semester. See you around.